This is a short video on some basics of attribute tables and selecting attributes. So here I have a GIS program open with my two layers, one for county, one for cities, and their attribute tables are here as well. Additionally, I have a spreadsheet that is not linked to a layer, but it's just a separate table with counties and their 2019 population, and we'll use that to join a table as well. Okay, so first off, here in the map tab of ArcGIS Pro, we have a few different options here for selection. The most simplest is the select. You can choose a different shape, a rectangle. You can kind of go like that, or you can choose maybe a lasso, where you can kind of, draw a different little, like a little rope to rope things in. Or you could even draw a custom polygon, right? And if you want to clear the select, and here we have, if you want to just select one layer, you can you can right click on it and you can make it the only selectable layer if you just want to work with one. We're not going to worry about that right now. So going back under the map tab, we can also clear the selection as well. That will unselect everything. Notice too in the attribute table, the items will be highlighted on the map, and the selected features in the attribute table will be highlighted as well. You can also use this to only show the selected features in the attribute table, or you can show the whole thing. I'm going to clear it. Another way you can select features is with an attribute query, and the tool would be here, select by attributes. Now this would be similar to what you would use in other database software that are non-GIS, where you're just finding rows that match some criteria. We'll do a simple one. We'll choose counties as the input rows. We'll make a new selection. In other words, we're just going to make a new selection. In other words, we're just simply going to select some things. And here, there's a tool to build the expression. So what field do we want to look for? Let's say county. And then the operator is equal to. So if we want to search for one particular county, like Fresno County, we can do that. We could also, there's different options as well. We could say the counties that are not Fresno begins with FR, does not begin with XY, and so on. There's also some numerical operators too. If it's a number field, you can look for things that are above a certain value, below a certain value. Or also you can look for things where the field is null, meaning there's just no data there. But just to keep it simple, let's say is equal to, and choose our county. The kind of the list of attribute values will populate in this list, Fresno County, and say okay. Now we have one for the set of counties, the one for Fresno is selected. Okay. Another type of selection is a location query, and here you're not choosing because of attribute values, but you're choosing because of the location of features. And the tool would be select by location. Okay. Now in this instance, I'm going to choose cities, and you can choose whether they intersect another feature. I'm going to say are within a distance of a feature, and the selecting features are going to be counties. And I'm going to change the distance units to miles. And so I'm going to search for cities. that are within 50 miles of Fresno County. And I'm going to, and because the Fresno County is selected, that's going to be the one that it goes from. And I'm going to make a new selection. Okay. And now it's chosen cities that were within a certain distance. We could have chosen whether they intersect, that would be within Fresno County or within a distance of. And so there's different options for doing that as well. But again, here they're chosen not because of their attributes, but because of where they are, their location. And I'm going to limit it to the selected features. And these are the cities that are within 50 miles of Fresno County. All right, now I'm going to clear all this. Okay. And choose have show all records. Okay, now so we have a table for the attribute table for counties, and I have a spreadsheet here with 2019 populations. And so what I want to do is I want to somehow match these up and get this information included with the attribute table for the layer of counties. Okay, the way I would do that I would choose joins, and I would add a join. So now what this will do is create kind of a lookup relationship where first here I have the county name. The join table is going to be this sheet 2, which is from a spreadsheet. And there I have the county is going to be the join field. So what it's going to do is it's going to match up where those names are the same. And then I'm going to say, okay. Okay, now in the county attribute table, it's appended population values from the spreadsheet. And so now I can, for example, I can select by attributes where from counties where population 2019 is greater than 500,000, let's say. So now we have the we can use the population value that we've joined in to work, to have other attribute queries for the county layer. And so that's one of the values of doing a join. It provides a lookup relationship with a secondary table that can append information to your attribute table.